how to get your tank's main gun firing. So as a recap, we have been using these free Vigilante assets from the Unreal Engine Marketplace and tweaking them a bit to get them working, drivable, movable in-game. So any of these assets kind of will do, whatever one you're working on. I'm working on the A1 Abrams right now. And really, so like as far as we've gotten so far, you should have a working tank, working as far as the wheels turn and the suspension works, and then the turret moves. And I additionally added this gun movement as well, which I did not mention during the turret moving tutorial. Well, maybe I should, but it works exactly the same. So I'm going to go over it really quickly as part of this. But for this gun firing, we want the gun to basically have a recoil. So when I press the mouse button, the left mouse button, the gun's going to recoil back a little bit, and then it's going to have a muzzle flash. There's going to be a loud boom sound, and there's going to be a puff of smoke. So let's take a look. So if I go press Control Space, open my shelf here, I need to open, basically I have this Chaos Tank blueprint that I'm working in. That's my main blueprint. And then I want to also work out of this animation anim blueprint that we created in previous tutorials. So I'm just going to click the anim blueprint as well. Okay, and then go back into this Chaos Tank blueprint. So basically what we wanted, the whole thing, we want this to start with mouse button press, so mouse left, I guess. Okay, and then the way you do this is like we're basically pressing one button and it's going to be a sequence, animation sequence. Although we're doing it in this main blueprint, we're going to be using what's called a timeline. Okay, and then this timeline is kind of I was going to rename this. I rename this guy. Oops. Rename this into main gun fire. Okay, and then you can see that this is a little bit different of a node. If you double click it, you can go in here and add tracks to the kind of parallel animations or sequence of animations you want to do. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add one track. It's going to be a float, and this is going to be the track for the recoil of the gun. And right click, and then you add a key to here, a keyframe, I guess, at time 0, enter, 0, enter. Okay, and then the second keyframe, right click to add the keyframe, and then you can add this. I'm going to add this at 1 second, and the value is going to be 1. And basically I'm going to use this as my interpolation, my curve that's going to be interpolated over the course of the recoil animation. The recoil basically is going to slam back immediately, kind of from the force of the gunfire, and then like slowly come back. So it's just going to come back linearly like this. I'm not going to make a curve or anything like that, although I could. I could add more keyframes in here. So that's for the recoil. And then we're going to do a muzzle flash, although the muzzle flash is just kind of a one-shot kind of deal. So we're going to add an event track for the muzzle flash. Okay, that's called muzzle. And then I'm going to right click and add one of these. So if you see these event curves, I guess, are, you can't really make a line from them. If you add another keyframe, then it's just a keyframe. There's no line associated. It's just kind of like one shot, one shot. So I'm going to delete that. So anyways, you need one for the muzzle flash. It's just going to kind of happen right when the mouse button is pressed. So I'm going to add another one. I'm going to add another event. It's going to be called smoke puff. Okay. And I'm going to right click, add another keyframe right at the beginning. It can happen, smoke puff can happen afterwards, like by a few milliseconds maybe. And then another track is going to be another event track. It's going to be an audio track. It's we're just going to call this, I guess, audio boom, no, audio explosion. Okay. So we've got our float curve for the recoil, and then we've got our events muzzle, smoke puff, and audio explosion are all events. So save that. When you go back into the event graph, you're going to see that this timeline has a couple extra execution and outputs, and as well as a recoil output along with the other ones. So what we're going to do, so like basically we're going to deal with this recoil first. So what we're going to be doing is, actually what I'll do is I'll add a variable called recoil. Okay, and then we're going to, remember we're doing this lerp. And then we're going to, oh actually this lerp has got to go into the alpha and then break the link to this one. Okay, and then during the update, we're going to set that recoil value. Oops, I made it a Boolean. This should be a float. Yeah, change variable type. Yeah, that's good. Okay, and then the return value goes to there. Okay, so we're gonna need to basically to get our gun kind of slamming back for the recoil, we need to go between two values, but I don't know what those values, like I don't know them yet. We're going to figure it out. So to figure out what these have to be, go into your anim graph and you'll see that I added the horizontal movement but additionally this vertical gun movement. I just thought I'd mention this is that I didn't mention this in the previous tutorial, but it works exactly the same as the horizontal turret. It's just a different rotation axis and different bone name in here. But anyways, back to our gun. We're talking about recoil. We want to figure out how the recoil works. So I go in translate bone or transform bone. Okay. Transform bone. You can hide these rotation and scale pins. Okay, just insert that into the network here, right in there. And then the bone to modify on this transform bone, once you click it, should be the gun, and it's actually this gun 1 joint. And then the actual other gun joint is the kind of root up and down motion. Okay, so this transform modify bone, you also need this translation mode to be add to existing and translation space to be parent bone space. And then change this pin, unclick expose it, compile, take a quick look at this tank, and then we can just change this X value. You'll see the gun moves back and forth. That's what we want to do. Just basically click the button, we do have a fire, and it goes pow, and then comes back. So the extent that we want this to go should be, if we're going negative, all the way into about there, maybe about -50. So remember that value, okay, -50. Reset all this stuff, okay, re-expose the pin, and then this transform bone node that you have that we're working with you should right click this and split the struct pin up. And then we're going to be using a new variable called, it's going to be called, we'll call it recoil value. And it's going to be a float. That's going to go into the X value. Okay, so now we need to get between this. So we have this recoil value we want in the anim graph, and we want that to use this recoil value that's in this other graph. So to translate those between graphs, we need to go into the anim graphs event graph, like I showed you before, and we're using a cast to cast from our chaos tank blueprint. And then basically you just, as chaos tank here, you take this pin out and you take the recoil. So the variable is called recoil, to get recoil. And then we're just going to basically just translate it over to set recoil. And the one we called this recoil value within the anim blueprint. So just, and then connect in your execution lines between, oops, what's going on here? Okay, so then should have something that looks like this. Okay. Now compile that. Okay, there's an error. Why? Probably because I need to work within the my actual chaos tank blueprint here. Yes, so my lerp value has to be, we're going from -50 to 0. Okay, compile that. Okay, you should be able to compile this and it works. Yep. Okay. And now let's just give it a try before we get the muzzle flash, smoke puff, and audio going. I'm going to press play on this. Now I should be able to press the mouse button and fire. Now it only happens once. I keep on clicking, but it's only did it one time. And I know why that is. That's because this left mouse button is going into play. It should be going to play from start. Because otherwise, if you hit play, then it only does the animation once. And then just keeps on playing, and this one resets it every time. Okay, so now I kind of fixed that. Let's just move on right now. I think well, actually go back, press play. Now we should be able to continuously click. Okay. All right, escape out of that, back into our anim blueprint. Now what happens is we need to get the other three things working. So the muzzle flash, the smoke puff, and the audio boom sound. So you go into your viewport on your main blueprint, and then hit add an arrow. Okay. So basically we're going to attach everything to this arrow, so it's going to make it easier to move around, because the arrow is going to, if you go into the details of the arrow, you're going to attach the arrow to a socket, but it's not just going to be a socket. We're just going to attach it to the gun bone, gun 1 bone, and then then we're going to add onto that arrow. We're just going to add the audio, a bit of audio, call it boom, and we're going to, on the arrow, we're going to add a particle system. That's going to be called muzzle. And then onto the arrow, we're also going to be adding a smoke puff. So, and that's another particle system. Smoke puff. Okay, for the boom, you should have the asset pack from Vigilante downloaded into your content folder. So you should have a bunch of sounds already in here. This one I'm just going to use this one called Explosion 1 for the boom. And then make sure these guys don't have, I think if you need to uncheck this auto activate. Okay, and then in the muzzle, this template should be, it's the asset pack actually has this M1A1 muzzle fire you can use. See, there it goes. And then that should be, I think auto activate should be unclicked there as well. Okay, and then smoke puff is right here. The details in smoke puff. Puff, puff. Okay, here, smoke puff. Okay, now you see it's kind of like set back here. This arrow. All you got to do is just click the arrow now, and then we can drag it forward, and it should just kind of move forward. Oops, that's the wrong thing. The arrow should just move forward with everything. Okay, compile it. See what happens. All right, we got our muzzle. That's the A1 muzzle. Fire. Here, let's do, yeah, that's probably fine. All right, compile that. Go back into your event graph. Now, these three functions have to be activated upon the pressing of the fire button. So let's go activate. So we activate the muzzle, activate smoke puff, and activate explosion. Was it audio? Audio? Oh, no, it's actually, I called it boom. My bad. Okay, compile that. We should be able to see something now. Okay, now press the, there you go. Oh, some reason I'm getting blanks here. Oh, I know why. Make sure you hit reset on all these guys. Okay, press play. There we go. All right. Oh, looks like we've got some fire still on our muzzle. Let me just go back and fix that too. I think it's the smoke puff needs to be, okay, so on finished, this smoke buff has to be deactivate. So deactivate smoke puff. Okay. All right, does that work? Oh no, it's still puffing. Oh, maybe it just takes a little while. Oh, that's okay. All right, there you go. There you go. Now we've got a tank and it drives and everything works. Gun goes up and down. My audio's not working though. Oh, yes. Somehow that key did not get in there. Okay, compile. Press play. There we go. All right. Works. That's fun. All right, you got a little bit more of a satisfying tank to drive around. Now, some of the last things I'm going to do is on this tank is tutorial on a bit of like a ballistic kind of explosion. So getting that projectile to just hit things. That's going to be the last part of this tutorial, I think, is exploding stuff. And then I'm going to start moving on to the other Vigilante assets. Okay, so see you next time, and good luck.